I don't think people understand how big Michael Jackson was.
Guys, he was like worldwide famous before social media. I don't think people understand like that level of fame. It's like an unprecedented level of fame.
Well, I knew Michael very well, and he was a special guy.
I love Michael Jackson very, very much.
In 2009, when Michael Jackson died, the world believed his story had finally come to an end. The king of pop was gone. But what people didn't realize was that his music wasn't, because behind the scenes, hidden across studios, hard drives, and private archives, there was something almost no one fully understood at the time: a massive collection of unreleased recordings. Not just a few songs, hundreds. Songs no one had heard, songs he never released, and in some cases, songs he may have never wanted anyone to hear at all. Over the years, people have called it a vault, but what was actually inside that vault, and why some of it has never been released, is where things start to get complicated. To understand how something like this could exist, you need to understand how Michael Jackson worked. He wasn't the type of artist who went into a studio, recorded 10 songs, and released an album. He was obsessive, perfection-driven, relentless. For every track that made it onto an album, there were dozens that didn't. He would record multiple versions of the same song, rewrite lyrics, change entire structures, work on something for years, and then suddenly abandon it. Not because it wasn't good, but because it wasn't perfect. People who worked with him have said that he was constantly creating, always recording, always experimenting, sometimes even recording ideas that were never meant to become full songs. Just melodies, hooks, concepts, fragments of something bigger. And over time, all of that began to build up, session after session, year after year, album after album, until what was left behind wasn't just a collection of leftovers, it was an entire archive. By the time of his death in 2009, that archive had become enormous. Estimates vary, but many believe there are hundreds of unreleased recordings. Some say over 500. And these aren't all the same. Some are fully completed songs, polished, produced, ready to release. Others are demos, rough versions, early drafts, and then there are the unfinished ones. Songs that stop halfway, tracks with missing vocals, ideas that were never completed. Which raises a question that fans still argue about to this day. If these songs existed, why didn't he release them? The answer is simple: because he chose not to. For Michael Jackson, releasing music wasn't just about putting songs out into the world. It was about control. Every detail mattered: the sound, the message, the timing. If something didn't meet his standard, it didn't get released, no matter how good it was. That's why some of the most talented people in the industry have said that his unreleased material could rival what most artists put out officially. But for him, it still wasn't enough, and that's how the vault grew. Not because he ran out of time, but because he never stopped creating. After his death, everything changed, because suddenly, all of that music, all of those recordings, were no longer under his direct control. They became part of his estate. And that's where things took a very different turn. Shortly after 2009, his estate entered into a massive deal with Sony Music Entertainment, a deal reported to be worth around $250 million. At the time, it was one of the biggest contracts in music history. The goal? To release new material. Posthumous albums, songs that had never been heard before. On paper, it made sense. There was clearly enough material, and the demand was massive. Fans wanted more. The world wanted more. But the moment those releases started happening, so did the controversy, because not everyone agreed with what was being put out. The first issue was authenticity. Some fans began to question certain tracks. They listened closely, and something didn't feel right. There were debates online, people analyzing vocals, comparing recordings, asking a simple but powerful question: is that really him? In some cases, even people close to him raised concerns. Family members, longtime listeners, people who knew his voice. And the more these questions spread, the more attention they attracted. One of the biggest controversies came from songs that were believed to feature vocals that didn't fully match his known recordings. This led to legal disputes, arguments over whether certain tracks were genuine, and eventually, some of those songs were pulled from streaming platforms altogether. Think about that for a second. Music released under the name of one of the most famous artists in history, later being questioned and removed. That's how serious the situation became. But authenticity wasn't the only issue. The second problem was something even more complicated. Many of these songs were never finished. They weren't ready. Some didn't have final vocals. Others were missing production, which meant that in order to release them, they had to be completed after his death. Producers stepped in, engineers worked on them, new elements were added, old recordings were adjusted. And while that made it possible to turn these ideas into full songs, it also raised another question. Where do you draw the line? At what point does a song stop being his and start becoming someone else's interpretation of what it could have been? Because when an artist like Michael Jackson leaves something unfinished, there's a reason. Maybe he wasn't happy with it, maybe he planned to change it, or maybe he simply didn't want it released at all. And now, years later, those decisions are being made by people who weren't there when the song was created, people who didn't hear the original vision, people who are working from fragments and trying to turn them into something complete. This created a deeper, more uncomfortable conversation, not about music, but about ethics. Should unreleased work be made public after an artist dies? Just because something exists, does that mean it should be heard? Some argue yes. They say it allows fans to connect with the artist in a new way, to hear different sides of their creativity, to experience more of what they left behind. But others disagree. They believe that unreleased work was kept hidden for a reason, that it represents ideas that were incomplete, or personal, or simply not meant for the public, and releasing it goes against the artist's own standards. In the case of Michael Jackson, this debate becomes even more intense because of how precise he was, how selective he was, how much control he had over his work. This wasn't an artist who casually released music. Every song was deliberate. Every album was crafted, which makes the idea of releasing unfinished material even more controversial, because there's no way to know what he would have done with it. Despite all of this, some music has been released. Posthumous albums, previously unheard tracks, songs that give fans a glimpse into what he was working on. And for many people, that's enough. But here's the part that keeps the mystery alive. Not everything has been released, not even close. Even today, there are still recordings that haven't been made public, unheard demos, unfinished songs, possibly even completed tracks that remain locked away. And no one outside a very small circle knows exactly how much is left. That's what makes this so fascinating, because the vault isn't just a story. It's real. It exists, but it's not a single room you can walk into. It's a scattered archive, pieces of a creative process that never stopped, a collection of ideas that range from brilliant to incomplete. And somewhere within that collection, there could still be songs the world has never heard. Songs that could change how people remember him, or songs that could raise even more questions. And that's why the vault continues to capture attention, not because of what we've heard, but because of what we haven't. In the end, the story of Michael Jackson's unreleased vault isn't just about music. It's about legacy, control, and the difference between what an artist creates and what the world eventually sees. Because when he was alive, he decided what was finished, what was good enough, what represented him. Now those decisions are being made by others, and that changes everything. So when people talk about a secret vault being opened, the truth is more complex. There wasn't a single moment where everything was revealed. There wasn't one discovery that changed everything overnight. Instead, it's been a slow process, piece by piece, release by release, controversy by controversy. And through it all, the biggest question still hasn't been answered. How much of his work is still out there, and how much of it will never be heard? Because the real mystery isn't what was found after his death. It's what's still hidden, and whether some of it was never meant to be found at all.